Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest today is incredible, Michael Loeb, co-founder and CEO of the venture collective Loeb NYC. And Loeb NYC has a number of early to mid-stage companies within its portfolio and is backed by an expert department of shared services. This Swiss Army knife of services is packed with a full cabinet of everything that a startup needs to get off the ground and accelerate growth. And Michael originally founded Loeb NYC as Loeb Enterprises with his longtime business partner and my man, Rich Vogel, in 2006, after exiting their previous company, Synapse, to Time Inc. for an estimated $800 million. Damn. This was, as Michael likes to call it, and we will dig into it, the most expensive rehire in history. I'm going to say the same thing to Gary Vee in a couple of years, but that's a story for another time. And since Michael originally tried to launch his company when he was an employee of Time, but was let go before he had the chance. After a meeting with Synapse after the acquisition to help it transfer to Time as a wholly owned subsidiary, Michael also helped his former business partner, Jay Walker, with the founding of a little travel site called Priceline.com. Maybe you guys have heard of it. And the two worked together previously, and it was just one of many businesses Michael would help to create in his lengthy career as a serial entrepreneur, almost as lengthy as my introduction here. And today we're going to hopefully learn a lot more about Michael's philosophy and outlook on the industry in these strange times. I'm not using the word unprecedented. I'm trying to remove it from my vocabulary, and a ton more. So let's get right to it. Michael Loeb, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Thank you, Adam. And by the way, for all you entrepreneurs out there with a good idea, send them over here.
Yes.
Because we do have a venture collective. We got about 24 companies in the collective. We are self-financed. So our model is come up with an idea either internally or externally. And by the way, we are not VCs. We are entrepreneurs, a collection of entrepreneurs. So we are founder friendly, actually super friendly. Many of the people that are part of our orbit, we have backed multiple times. And backing for us is a little bit different. As Adam mentioned, it's not just the capital, but it's the capital, it's the infrastructure, it's the strategy, and then the shared services. And indeed, Swiss Army knife is something that I use to describe it. Everything from back office accounting to UI, UX, to tech, to marketing, which ranges from old school. We have our own phone center in Virginia. We make our own TV ads for our healthcare companies. We built a field force of 3,000 people, all old school media to new school, which is SEM, SEO, social, podcast, influencer, you name it. So
and this is the pitch. This is the pitch that I do. So full disclosure to everybody here. I've been working with Loeb for the past year.
Is mine better than yours, or what? We're about to
Mine's a little sharper, sir. I will tell you that. I've been doing it a lot, not as much as you, but I got it down pretty well.
I got to work on it. Well.
All right, let's jump in here. And we spoke a little bit about what's happening right now, but let's talk about the past, because you weren't at this level of success for your entire life. Let's talk about the early days. Let's talk about real quick. I know it was back in the days of black and white television. I'm kidding here, but back in those days, when you started out in your career, where did it all begin, man?
Yeah, so I followed my dad into Time Inc., which was not unusual. Time Inc., even though it was a public company, was the type of place that, a lot of sons and daughters would join Time Inc. My dad was a journalist, I would say of some renown, but it was more than some. He was, by turns, the managing editor of Fortune magazine for about 10 years. Before that, he he put Money Magazine on the map, and before that, he was an editor at Time Magazine. He had almost a 40-year career there, and so I joined him. I wanted actually to work at HBO, which was at the time the Rockstar company. And, I interviewed again and again and again. They never would have me. And I thought, you know what, let me go to Time Inc. and then I can move over. Turned out I never moved over, and climbed the ladder pretty quickly. Ran marketing for Sports Illustrated. You're looking at the guy who helped to invent the sneaker phone and the football phone and bloopers.
I was just going to get to that. Yep.
Yeah. Well, okay. And helped to launch Sports Illustrated for Kids. Had something to do to turn the swimsuit issue into the franchise that it became. So got the reputation as Launch Boy. If I was a little bit better, they would have called me Launch Man. But they gave me the assignment to launch Entertainment Weekly, and that was the job that got me fired. They never volunteer, and that's especially true in a big company. You were having a question.
Yeah, my first question is: do you have in your archives and storage? Do you have every Sports Illustrated phone ever created? Do you have one of each?
I have a sneaker phone. Yeah, I got it.
These are hard-hitting questions.
Yeah, no, I can bring it over and show you a sneaker phone. But Adam, it was talk about a crazy time. For a million years, AT&T did not let you have your own phone. You had to rent it from AT&T, and then the Supreme Court said, no, consumers have a right to buy it. And all of a sudden, people are buying telephones, and they were all coming from China, and they were all like super cheap. And we came up with these novelty phones, and they were just crazy. I mean, flew off the shelf. Oh, yeah. So yeah, the sneaker phone and the football phone were two of the greats. And and they were premiums. Sports Illustrated. So
right. And what was it? It was you had to sign like a multi-year subscription to get the phone. There was a hook there. No,
you just had a subscription. It was 3 installments of $9.95.
There we go.
For Sports Illustrated. But the phones were so. I mean, we were like importing them for like $3, and they actually worked. It was crazy. There was a Cambrian moment where manufacturing in China was just about nothing, and we took full advantage of that. So we created some great product. Actually worked, and it was free with your Sports Illustrated subscription. If you looked at one of the ads, it was all about the sneaker phone or the football phone or the blooper video, and it's like, that's free, and by the way, with a paid subscription to Sports Illustrated,
you get the magazine. But people love freemiums. I mean, still to this day, people love freemiums. People love getting something as an added value. Maybe it's a collectible, it's something unique, but it still works. I mean, that's a tried and true technique, and that's something I truly admire about you and Loeb itself, how you combined this old school foundational tried and true business. The way I grew up with a rotary phone. I grew up with HBO with the box on the TV. My VCR had a wire to it. I'm not that young. But you combine that with this really incredible forward-thinking entrepreneurial spirit that you put into every one of the startups. And that's something that I truly admire, Michael.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We'll talk a little bit about the venture collective, et cetera, but one of the fun things about my job, there's so many fun things about my job. And, but one of the fun things is that, I get to stay current, right? And a lot of guys, my age and in my situation, just have, they're growing tomatoes, and I just have no interest in that. And I just find that every day I learn something brand new, and hear about a company. What stuns me is all of a sudden I'll hear about a company and I'll find out that, they've raised $1 billion and they got a valuation of 4, right? And it's like, how could that be? How could I have never heard of this company? And, the other thing, Adam, is what's old is new again. I mean, there was a clutch of home delivery companies in 2000 and they all went out of business, right? Every single one. And now, we've got the reincarnation of that, and it's very, very important. But so I love my job. I love thinking of new ideas. I love working with people half my age and twice as smart as me. And I love, kind of the energy and how things are, totally shifting and moving. And I'm sure we'll get to that too, because it is
Absolutely.
a whole new world out there.
Yeah. So let's hit the rewind button for a moment and go to Time Inc. at the time that you got let go. And I didn't know it was at 36. And this is your show, not mine today, but I got let go at 36 too. And I needed that moment in my life to have that moment of accountability and self-awareness where I said, what am I doing? I'm not happy. I need to pivot. I need to follow my true passion and do what I do best. And that pointed me into the world of recruiting. Let's take it back to Michael Loeb at age 36, getting let go from Time Inc.
So I'm, and I just assumed that I would be at Time Inc. forever. I do know that whenever you do new things in a Fortune 500 company, it is, it's a risk, because if it doesn't go quite to plan, and new stuff does not go quite to plan, and they got to blame somebody because upper management is never going to take responsibility. So I and the managing editor were shown the door. In truth, there was a flaw in Entertainment Weekly in the very beginning, which was my, concept of Entertainment Weekly was the three big sports, right? Moving from the three big sports, which is what I had at Sports Illustrated, to the three big forms of entertainment. So, it would be that simple. It was a fans magazine. It wasn't People magazine. It wasn't 300 word articles. It was 3,000 word articles. And if it was about, I don't know, Gal Gadot, because we have Wonder Woman 1984 coming out, and that would be cover subject. It would, trace her from her roots in Israel, becoming, the beauty queen of Israel, and blah, 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 blah. And she was about to give up acting before, she scored Wonder Woman. Rest is history. But it would have approached it that way. Lots of pictures, just like a Sports Illustrated article about an athlete, right? So, but that was my idea. The editor thought it was more about ballet and books and poetry. That's fine, except the last name was Weekly, and unless you get to 1 million in circulation, and some people on the podcast, not all, will remember the magazine industry, some fondly, right? Because it's almost not here anymore. But unless you got over 1 million in circulation, you wouldn't get on a weekly magazine from Time Inc. Other people could do it cheaper. You're not going to get over the fixed variable divide. You're not going to make any money. So, and you're not going to do that if it's about, poetry and opera and ballet. It's not going to be about the feet thing. It's got to be the ball down the middle of the lane. And your next question is, well, who's in charge? And at Time Inc., and also in many companies of its ilk at the time, the fact of the matter is the editor had, the domain of the editor was the editorial product, and the business types had about nothing to say. And my analogy, and I got one right here, is a can of Coke. And Coke, this is product placement. We're getting money for this, right? Okay.
Hopefully, yeah. So, Coke, if you need a new podcast to sponsor.
There we go. But the product manager, at Coke has everything to do with the can out, nothing to do with the can in, right? And it's like that, or used to be like that, with magazines. And in fact, every editor was appalled to see what was going on in the internet, because that divide between advertising, and promotion and, and the words were being, that divide was being blurred, right? And there was some sanctity at one time about those two things. No longer, that's gone. But anyway, so yeah, we were both shown the door, and I was 36 at the time, and I was working on an idea inside of Time Inc. Yeah. And when I was given my liberation papers, what the hell? Let me try that. And the idea, and it sounds very quaint now, but at the time, magazines and newspapers, you'd buy one and then they would send you renewal notices, and either you renewed or didn't, and then you were billed. It was always weird to me. To me, I would divide the world into products and services would automatically recur, and products did not, right? Products were one and done. And services would, like water and electricity, just
utilities.
Utilities would just, and also your American Express card. They don't ask you to renew. They just say, we're billing you 35. Yeah, they just bill you. So we brought that to the magazine industry, right? We brought the tech and we brought the concept, and it was more than a SaaS platform. It was kind of a cradle to grave thing. So we'd sell the subscription and maintain it.
Full life cycle.
Life cycle. And it was at the time much more of a lift than you would think, because there were hundreds of magazine fulfillment centers, with spaghetti code.
Right.
There's no such
Super
thing
manual.
Super manual stuff. So we had to create, you call them plugins now, or SDKs now, or APIs now. And, but again, that just didn't exist. Right. So we had to beat our port open to them and be able to do what we did. But anyway.
So 2 quick questions going back to getting let go from Time Inc. Did you feel that you were disappointing your father when you got let go?
I felt, good question. I forgot that in your CV it's therapist also. So, he was enraged, actually. He was very upset because he was frankly iconic within Time. Even though Time at the time had about 8,000 employees, he was, from an editorial perspective, one of the big guys. And they didn't tell him. And he thought that, they would give him a phone call and say, hey,
interesting. Look, give him a heads up.
It was a surprise to him. And he just thought it was very ingracious and very inappropriate. And, so it affected him more than me. I did say, well, look, I'm going to try this on my own. And if it doesn't work, then we'll go to plan B. I guess plan A was continuing at Time Inc. So plan C, but so I tried it, and it actually worked.
It worked out pretty well looking back on it. And you met Jay Walker during your time at Inc., correct?
I met Jay super early in that journey. Jay persuaded me that I was just this dopey guy who got fired from a Fortune 500 company, and he was a serial entrepreneur. And he had that entrepreneur swagger and everything else, all the trappings. If you didn't know any better, you thought he was worth $1 zillion. I found out later that was quite far from the truth. But we decided to throw our lot in together. I did learn fairly early in the curve that Jay had many, many profound gifts, but he was not particularly enamored with managing people or logistics.
And that was your balance.
Well, that was our balance. And again, he's a profoundly. Some people call him a genius. I think that's not far from being right. He probably is a genius. I think he is a genius. He certainly has an unbelievable capacity to research and work and think. And we had this, Cambrian moment that lasted about 5 years. And out of that grew both Synapse and Priceline. Because Jay's job after the early going of Synapse became think of the next thing we do together. And out of that grew Priceline.
And was there that? I always love to ask this question, especially about such a insanely successful company like Priceline. Was it a development over time, or was it that moment over a glass of wine where you're like, hey, let's start this thing called Priceline? I have an idea. This is what it might look like. How did that happen?
Yeah, no, it was lightning in a bottle, Jay's idea, and it was like a thunderbolt. I had a different way of describing it than he did. I thought of it as the disintermediation of travel. And it used to be, Adam, that you had to have a travel agent, just like in stocks, you had to have a broker, right? And the brokers took a big vig in the middle. You had to have, in travel, you had to have a travel agent, and they took 6% in the middle. And this was essentially self-serve travel was the concept.
Breakthrough at the time.
It was one of the very, 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 very first. Mm-hmm. In fact, we didn't
before Expedia, right? Yeah.
Right?
It was pre-Expedia.
Oh yeah. It was way out in front. We're talking about 95. We didn't even use the word internet, right? The word internet that was not part of the lexicon. It was www something or other, right? And in fact, after Jay conceived the Priceline, it was Synapse that was financing, because Synapse, we did it the old-fashioned way, no outside capital, and it was like a shot out of a cannon, made money almost immediately, and it was the it was the profits of Synapse that was funding Priceline. And the reason why I go into some detail, that was the experiment that informed our venture collective, right? So essentially what we had was one roof over our head, one workforce. And I would say, Adam or Rich Vogel, you're going to work the morning for Synapse, the afternoon for Priceline, and the evening you're back at Synapse, or vice versa. And we did not know if this, if people would spit the bit or they would embrace it. And it turns out that they embrace it, because you get really, really brilliant, diligent people. They, no matter how challenging the job, and no matter, what rate of hypergrowth you're in, the fact of the matter is, after a year, it gets a little bit routine. So they welcomed something else. And very facile, very agile minds can work that way. And so that experiment of having, Synapse incubate Priceline, and we financed it for a couple of years, and right up to the public offering, because the last shot was bringing in a venture capital firm, but there was no internet business. So if we say, hey, venture capital firm, write a check into Priceline, they, it's WW whatever.
What is it?
There was no industry. There was nothing, right? And so what we wound up doing for the first time ever was getting outside capital into Synapse. And essentially, Synapse didn't need it. We're throwing off cash. So it was essentially a private equity, not a venture. It was a private equity play with General Atlantic Partners. And the money came off the table to Jay to finance Priceline. So he sold half of his half. And that was the second shot of Priceline, which got him right to the public offering. And at that point, we kind of, at that point, when it gets really serious, you do have to untether yourself, just because outside capital doesn't want to know that, you have any dependency with like a shared service.
I love finding out the kernels and the origin stories. That's incredible. And one of the things that I really love about your current portfolio now, it really helps focus on some low income consumers with businesses like Script Relief and Steady, to name a few. When and why did that become a priority and a focus for you?
Well, I wished I could claim to be so noble. It just did not happen quite that way. I mean, it's great that it did, and it's great that it helped people. I do think that, take Script Relief, we have saved people billions of dollars on their, pharmaceuticals. And Steady is doing the other company to which you refer, which is, I call it your advocate in the gig economy. So if you're a Uber driver, Uber would have you work at, in a car from morning, noon, and night. The fact of the matter is, at 11 and 2, the utilization rate is about 30%. So there's 70% of the cars on the road that shouldn't be on the road. Right, exactly. So you are not making money, at that time, because you're trolling around in your car and using gas. And
wasting gas. Mm-hmm.
And, amortizing miles, blah, 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 blah. But so what Steady will do is say, Adam, here's your plan. You're going to be in your Uber from 7 to 9:30. At 9:30, this is the corner you go to. You're walking dogs. And at 12, I got you working at Home Depot until 3. And from 3 to 5, it's DoorDash. And at 5 o'clock, Lyft, because they pay better.
Right.
So that's what it does. Now, it will, we do these studies all the time, but the latest number is that we increase income for gig workers by an average of $5,500, an average. $5,580 a year. So, I mean, this is a real, game changer.
And especially right now when so many people are out of work and they're turning to the gig economy, and you have new people signing up to be, DoorDash drivers, Uber, Lyft, and all these things in the gig, maybe work part-time seasonal at Home Depot in the evening to stock. If you're helping them find the efficiencies, because they don't have access to this information and technology, this is incredible.
So yes, they really are helping people, and I'm delighted that they are helping people. I love mission-based companies. I do have a prohibition on bad stuff, right? I wouldn't do anything that's bad for people. It's great that it's good for people, but really the attraction of both those companies is that it was, big and disruptive and novel, and nobody was doing it. And really that was the opportunity. We like platforms more than we like products, although we do have several products.
Yeah. And let's get into Rich Vogel, someone that I'm close with there, and your business partner. And you guys, congratulations, were named Visionaries of the Year by CSQ. And in the write-up they did for you guys, they talked about you guys being a people-first investor. Can you explain what that means, being a people-first investor, and what you look for in people that you invest in as operators? Is it you invest in the jockey before the horse, over the horse?
Absolutely. I do think, by the way, that entrepreneurs are born and not made. And what's an entrepreneur? It's the guy who, or gal, who, they think stop signs are for everybody else, right? They think gravity does not apply to them. They look at just about anything and they say, I'm going to flip it upside down and make it better. I mean, they just automatically, right? Most, I think, 99.9% of everybody is just taking the status quo. And when presented with the status quo, the presumption is, this is the bestest for the leastest. We can't improve upon that. And an entrepreneur looks at everything and says, this is whacked. I can make it better, right? And, about the status quo, they love that road less traveled, right? Because if nobody is doing it, right? If everybody's saying can't be done, that's a giant opportunity, because that scares away everybody. So I think entrepreneurs have that. There really is, the lemonade stand phenomenon, right? These are people who at a very early age like the idea of creating businesses. They like money. They like getting money in. It's more of a placeholder. That happens to be true, but just the idea that, I could get a dime worth of, lemons and turn it into $1 worth of lemonade, and I'll sell out and I'll make $10 and I'm 8. It's really a truism. And so we are jockey guys. And what I think differentiates us as operators, and I don't mean to cast aspersions with venture capitalists, we work with many of them, because after we spin a company up and kind of scale it, we often, not always, go for outside capital, but then it's not a 3 and a 5, it's a 30 and a 50, right? These are companies that are much bigger. But what VCs don't tell you is there's always, when you start a business, there's 3 existential events, right? You don't know what they are. It's like, extinction events, right? There's been 5 or 6 in the history of the planet. There's 3 in every company, and you will wake up in the morning, open the door, and somebody's going to punch you in the face, right? And you're going to get bloody and you're going to fall down. And it's about getting back up, right? You're going to lose a big client. There's going to be a law that's changed. There's going to be competition. Something is going to happen, and you're going to get bloody. And VCs, they talk about love them, right? But they talk about up and to the right. They just look for that smooth line up and to the right. And the fact of the matter is, there's a down vector, right? And there's not 1, not 2, but there's 3 down vectors. And, the VC model is, hey, Adam, you're bright, you're 27, you got a good idea. Here's $5 million, go spend it. And if the jockey comes back and says, hey, Adam, I got to tell you, I put $1 million to work. I had this all wrong. This dog ain't going to hunt. I mean, maybe the dog can limp to first base, but that's not what I want. And they say, you idiot, go back out there and spend all the money. And, we don't operate that way. For one thing, we don't give people, we pay bills. We don't give people a bucket of money. We just pay bills. And every month is kind of a decision and a redecision. But we play long ball, and like long ball, like the type of ball that, a VC would not do, because they'd frankly give up. You go through the money, you miss your KPIs, and you're done. And what we do is, we look at the business opportunity, and we look at the team, and we see, their resolve, and we check again our assumptions, and we talk about ourselves as being theory based. Like, what's the theory? And if the theory holds true and it's not working, it's an executional problem. So pivot on the execution. And that's kind of our view to the world. Now, it is so interesting, Adam, about people, and I will, and you see all sorts of points of failure. A lot of times the points of failure are the entrepreneur is not the entrepreneur that you thought they were. They were not as advertised. And again, about half of our 24 companies started with de novo internally generated ideas, but the other half are either external ideas or external companies that are small that we can be, if not the only, about the only source of capital. And we give them the big embrace with shared services, and we knock ourselves out to, build those companies, because what we're leaning into is the high rate of failure in the industry, in the startup. They say that VCs will talk about, 2 in 10 working, but if you give them a drink, they'll say more like 1 in 10. And we're leaning in on that. And we think with our model, we're multiples above that.
Right. Exactly.
Because of the support, because of our definition of success, if you are 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10, you don't need a 30X or a 50X. You can have a 3X or a 5X. And there's a lot of 3Xs and 5Xs that, the money behind them will say that's not good enough, drive faster. And sometimes you'll run into a wall and you'll die. Anyway, I spoke a lot.
No, I love it. When was the last time you got punched in the face?
Oh, you get punched in the face all the time. I was going to tell you about one entrepreneur that we had. We were high on this business and thought it had legs. It always, when you're starting something, Adam, takes twice as long, right? And costs twice as much. Actually, if it was only twice, you'd be very happy. It's more like 5 times as much. And, entrepreneurs are optimists, and they always miss that, right? They always think that it's faster and cheaper. So we had a couple of guys, good idea. We really liked it. And we really thought it was synergistic with some of the other things we were doing. And we liked them, and it was taking longer. And, as advertised, they said that they had a beat on the tech, and the fact is they didn't. They were wrong. That what they had built, that was really not functioning, not for what the needs were. And, then all of a sudden, they come back and they say, Michael, to get this to a place where we can have a raise is going to take $7 million more, right? And we had already put in like half that number, and it's going to take 7 million more. And, by the way, that is not a number that scares us, but it was a number that came out of nowhere. So it gave me pause.
Right.
And I said, okay, let's unpack this. What do you need? And they said, well, we need, 3 more engineers. We need 4 more of this, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm doing the math in my head. I'm saying, guys, that's 2.5 to 3 million. That's not 7 million.
Yeah. Where's the delta?
Where's the delta? But the other side of the message is, look, it's going to be 7 million. And if 7 million more come into the company, then the 2 of us, the founders, are going to be diluted to a point where it's not worth us working on it. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I mean, you had an obligation, not only to me, but there was some other outside capital that was in. You have an obligation to know enough about yourself that you're going to go the distance, right? And one of them had the temerity to say, well, before I decided to start this business, and he was making, 150 as the CEO. He was saying, my paycheck was the year that I decided to start this business. Do you know what my K1 was? And I said, I don't care. And he said it was $600,000. So I went from 600,000 to 150. And I said, dude, I'm just going to sell your company because I can't. If that's where you are on this, right? If that's where you are on this, then, this is not going to be successful, because what you're saying is you thought, this wouldn't take a lot of time and I'd be in the green, really quickly and making my own income and then have $100 million exit. And basically, I had to have a distress sale and I took a total bath on it. But
it happens.
My point is, Adam, well, you get this all the time, but a lot of people think they're entrepreneurs or like to think they're entrepreneurs. But the fact of the matter is, being an entrepreneur is littered with bodies and failure and blood and sweat and not everybody. It's not for everybody. In fact, it's not for most people. And imagine if the model really is 2 out of 10, right? Imagine if you need 10 shots on goal. I mean, again, we think we're better, but it's really, it sounds glamorous on the outside looking in. Then we look at these numbers from Slack and we look at, some of these companies, that,
those are anomalies almost.
Those are definitely anomalies.
Yeah.
And, but you either have to be mentally equipped and ready to go to war, to go to battle and do it for a long time, or not. Right. Then just, work for, IBM and
just go get that paycheck. Yeah. I mean, the big shift for me, I'm 3 years into my entrepreneurship journey. So a couple of key points here. I think that entrepreneurship qualities also lay dormant because I look back on when I was 21, 22, hustling my ass off, a couple of odd jobs here and there, the things I did to make money. If I didn't have those 17 years of experience before launching my own business, I don't think I could ever be at this point. And another key point that kind of gave an aha moment, I had a shift about a year ago where I stopped thinking about a paycheck and I thought more about cash flow. How do I keep my business moving and growing with cash flow, where I have the cash flow to maintain my personal side, my business, and that delta there, that's going to be the income there. And I had that mindset shift. That changed everything for me, Michael, how I thought about running a business. And for me, that was a big aha moment.
Mm-hmm. So, jockeys, we're big jockey guys. And because that again, they're rare. Yeah. The neat thing about being an entrepreneur, which is what gets me out of bed every morning, is that it's just so fresh. You learn things every day. You learn to cope with failure, and in fact, we don't like to use the F word. I have an Edisonian point of view. And he said, I never failed. I just found out, or I just learned 10,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. So
right. It's a good one.
You have to, there's another one, which is from Sir Isaac Newton, which is, if I see further, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants, which just means that everything is a collaboration. Everything is building on top of the last thing. And, we all have to appreciate that and honor that. But the fact is that it's very iterative, and you got to be agile, and you've got to have a point of view, but you got to read the tea leaves too. And you got to be able to pivot, left and right pretty quickly.
Yeah. And so you spoke about what gets you up in the morning, but what keeps you up at night, Michael?
Oh, the same thing. Getting to work on all that stuff and seeing what all those companies are doing and figuring out how I can help them.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.